Welcome to Fourth and Frames. I'm Chris Battistel with my friends Drew Scott and Rhett Manuel. And tonight we welcome very special guest, Gator J, as we dive into our Bussin, discussing, and mid-players engage in some master debation and talk high-profile players in trust or bust for Week 16. As the great poet Chris Brown once said, let's get it on and poppin'. Welcome. Week 16 is in the books. And like I said, for your semifinal matchups, we got none better than the man, the myth, the legend himself, one of the most hardest working people in the game. Host over at Going for Two, host right here at Fantasy and Frames. He's a Florida Gator fan, but most importantly, he's our friend, Mr. Gator J. Welcome to the show, brother.
Wow, it's been a long time, seeing you guys from behind the screens, giving you guys comments, getting you guys in the private chat and all that. And then to actually being on camera with you guys is an absolute honor. I didn't have to be one of the first ones on screen. You had, guys like Howard Bender and Bob Harris and, Kendall Venezuela, and you had all these big names. And then finally, when it comes down to it, you get me on screen. But that's okay. Hey, listen, seconds and thirds after Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner is always good, as long as you warm it up properly, right?
No, see, you look at it that way. I look at it as it's week 16. It's the semifinals. It's a very important week. So who else to bring on other than Gator J to get these people to fantasy championships? That's the way you should be looking at it.
Yes, indeed.
Listen, I looked at it the one way, and I wanted you to make sure that the reason you brought it up or why I'm here is for that reason.
Okay.
I didn't want to boost. I didn't want to go. I don't want to toot too much here.
Hey, this is a toot your own horn show, so by all means, toot away, Gator.
The football ain't gonna spike itself, baby.
The Gronk spike. Let's go.
That's it. How many semis are you in, Gator? Before we jump into the meat of the show, bless us with your season, brother.
And now here we go. Out of 32 leagues, 6. Not great. Not great, Bob. Not great.
Better than zero.
It's better than zero. Absolutely.
You want to make you feel better?
I am new. I'm also counting my dynasty and of course redraft all together here. So it's rough. But yeah, I'm looking good in 2 of them for sure. So I should be bringing at least two rings to the house.
I love it.
There you go.
I love it. For anyone watching, we appreciate you all. Please like the stream, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to get notified whenever the Fantasy and Frames team drops new content. Head over to www.fantasyandframes.com to find all our weekly articles and rankings. And most importantly, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. Let's hit up some injury and news from around the NFL. All right, gentlemen, it's a big list we got to get through here. Most importantly, starting at the top, we lost Keaton Mitchell to the knee injury this weekend. It was devastating. He is out for the rest of the year. Fortunately, glass half empty. It was only an ACL injury, so he shouldn't miss anything that long term. He should be good to go, hopefully, for a camp, and we should see him at the beginning of next season. CJ Stroud, doubtful for this week, missed more practice, still in concussion protocol. Tyreek Hill with the ankle injury did not practice. We saw Jalen Waddle ball out in the absence of Tyreek Hill. Jamar Chase expected to miss at least this week with the AC joint sprain. Keenan Allen did not practice with the heel injury. Michael Pittman, concussion, did log a limited practice. So that's a positive sign for Michael Pittman. Zach Moss, the running back, did not practice with the forearm injury. Rhett, are we okay pivoting to Trey Sermon with the day that he did have with the absence of Zach Moss? Or, like I like to say, are we letting our opponents pick him up and make the mistake?
Well, here's what I'm going to say is that I was listening to JJ Zacharisian earlier this week, and some interesting stuff about Trey Sermon last week is that after the Zach Moss injury, he outsnapped Tyler Goodson 28-18, had 18 touches, and actually ran more routes than Tyler Goodson himself, even though he had more targets. So I'm going to say this. If Zach Moss doesn't play, if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play, I'm going to say it might be a risky proposition to start Trey Sermon, but if the opportunity is there like it was last week and he's somewhere around the neighborhood of 15 to 20 touches, I mean, we always say volume is king. You have to fire up the volume if you're desperate in that spot, at least as a flex guy if you're in a deeper league.
Yeah, I would caution you because Jonathan Taylor did log a full practice.
He's expected to practice fully all week.
He's expected to practice fully all week. And if that happens, Trey who?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. No, 100%.
Yeah, Trey who is right. Along with that, Will Levis with the ankle injury also did not practice. Gator, Tannehill could start for the Tennessee Titans. What are we doing with the pass-catching options in that Tennessee Titans offense? Can you rank them for me, include the wide receivers and the tight ends? So you got DeAndre
Hopkins.
Yeah, he's one, right? Anyone else startable in that offense for pass-catching wise?
You said rank them all, right? I thought I did. Even if you have to, I guess in a deeper league, maybe as your second tight end, depending on what your injury situation is, Okonkwo could be a usable. Tajay Spears is possible, but it's DeAndre Hopkins. You don't need anybody else out of that offense right now, whether it's Will Levis or Tannehill at this point.
Yeah. Love it. All right, Alexander Madison did not practice. Brian Robinson with the hamstring did not practice. Christian Watson did not practice. Jaden Reed with the toe injury also didn't log a practice today. Nico Collins, our darling over here at Fourth and Frames, again, did not practice. Trevor Lawrence with the concussion, no practice. Marquise Brown, no practice. Zay Flowers, no practice. And Ramondre Stevenson, no practice. Again, some of these guys that are playing on the weekend, these Wednesday practices don't mean too much. There are Saturday games, so make sure you're paying attention to the guys that practice tomorrow that play Saturday. Drew, one of the most important fantasy players for this weekend, did not play last week. We don't have any news reports on him. The situation with this guy is he plays on Monday. If you roster this player, are we trusting Josh Jacobs?
Oh man, that's tough because I don't want to pivot to. If you can roster Zamir White too, then I wouldn't have any problem trusting Josh Jacobs because I think you can just plug Zamir White in. It obviously won't be as good of a situation, but if you don't have a backup for the Monday night game, I think you almost have to find somebody else to fill in that is going to play. Like it's win or go home at this point, So you don't want to lay an egg at your running back one spot because Monday you find out that Jacobs isn't playing and you don't have a replacement. So if you don't have a replacement where you can hold out, I think you got to start somebody that is going to play this weekend. So that's a tough one, man.
Gator, any thoughts on Josh Jacobs?
No, I think
Drew, just pivot.
No, I think Drew said it right. The only way you're plugging Josh Jacobs into your lineup is if you have Zamir White. That when you find out at 6:30 that Josh Jacobs is not playing Monday, you can throw Zamir White in. That's the only way you're doing that, I would believe.
And in terms of handcuffs, you can do much worse than Zamir White. Last week he had 80 total yards and a touchdown. He was solid last week. So he's a guy that he was had pretty high draft capital last year. I believe it was 3rd round, something like that.
Mhm.
He's kind of been biding his time. We knew at Georgia he can catch the ball and run between the tackles pretty well. So he's a talented guy, but he's playing behind a guy like Josh Jacobs, and that's just, Josh Jacobs is one of those guys where if he's healthy, you start him no matter what. But if you're desperate and you need that and you have him available as your handcuff, and Josh Jacobs is out, I mean, Zamir White as a flex, sure. Anything above that, like if he's your RB2, I'm a little bit concerned. But if you have a little bit of depth, make that happen, sure.
Yep, and he got the touchdown.
Or you could go with league winner Brandon Bolden as Burns pointed out, of course.
I hate you, Burns. My God, I hate you.
Hey, and real quick, can I just say this? I want to throw this comment back on the screen from our boss man Jorge. You giving us a shout out, but more importantly, you'll notice a little Twitter logo in the bottom corner there. We can finally see Twitter comments on StreamYard again, so we don't have to tell people they got to go from Twitter to YouTube to comment on the show and for us to be able to see the comments anymore. We can interact with everybody now. So what a time to be alive, man.
It's beautiful.
It really is a beautiful thing. So drop your comments. We have Gator J here ready to answer them live on the show. Fellas, that's it from news from around the NFL. Let's get into why we're here, bussin', discussing in mid.
Go and try your luck. Touch me in again, we let it rain. Please don't start us up. Got that black and white, that yin and yang. Mr. Officer, please don't search us. We don't.
Yes. Bussin' discussing in mid. Bussin' is a player outside of the top 20 wide receivers, top 15 running backs, top 8 tight ends, or top 12 are QBs that we like. We love you too, Burnsy. Discussing player is a player inside those parameters that we don't like. And our mid player is a player that we think at the very least is going to hit their floor. A safe player for the semi-final week 16. And Gator, before we start this segment, I can't let you off the hook. We haven't done this in a while, but any chance we can get the Gator blessing of singing a song here on 4th and Frames?
I thought about this like 2 days ago. I knew this question was going to come up. I was hoping it was going to be towards the end. And then, of course, like I said, that was 2 days ago. And I had forgotten about it until you started talking right there. And I was like, oh, crap. What was that song? And I don't remember now. I was I had a good one. I had a good one. I'll have to think about it. But yeah, by the end, I promise I will have something, even if it's Merry Christmas, Santa something or other. I don't.
Good, man.
Yeah,
Or
give me
maybe
a minute on that one.
Cisco, yeah, the
Cisco?
song.
There you go.
Little
The
thong
song. There we go.
Baby.
Dong, dong, dong.
I dig it. So no singing yet, but we'll get to that. Gator, give us your bussin' call for week 16.
Here's the thing, guys, is as the guest, usually I would be the first one to jump in and throw my names into the show sheet. And I was not able to do that this week. So I was absolutely last. And that's fine because I can't believe you guys made this bussin' pick so easy for me. I know you guys hate tight ends. Every single one of you hate tight ends. I know this. And I know this because none of you have tight ends on your bussin' or even mid right now. It's crazy. You all are giving me fantasy championships. I'm taking fantasy championships from each one of you because I'm taking Hunter Henry. Tight end 13 this week on Fantasy Pros. Denver's defense allows the most fantasy points to tight ends on the season. Now, Josie Jewell is probably going to be the guy that's going to be covering Hunter Henry the most. Guess what? He allows the highest catch percentage among all defenders throughout the NFL that are covering tight ends this week.
All right.
Denver allows the second most yards per game to the tight end position at 69.2 per game. Look at the last 3 weeks. Week 13 to 15, Hunter Henry has the most targets, the most receptions, the most receiving yards, the most touchdowns than any other tight end or wide receiver that the Patriots have on their current roster. Per PFF, Hunter Henry is the highest rated receiving option for the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
between all of those stats, between them playing Denver, big week incoming. Hunter Henry, let's go.
See, that's why we saved you for this week, Gator.
Let's get the people to the finals. Bussin, Hunter Henry, Drew. Gator bless us with the tight end. Hit us with the wide receiver, man.
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying this. If Trevor Lawrence doesn't play, I'm going to immediately feel less confident in this call. But, I mean, the man basically broke his ankle and still played the next week. So, concussion or not, we ride. Whenever you look at the usage for Calvin Ridley compared to his actual production, the math just ain't mathing right now. Something ain't right. He's had 8 targets, 13 targets, 12 targets the last 3 weeks. But he has yet to finish inside the top 40 receivers any of those weeks, despite having 156, 166, and 164 air yards on those targets. We know there's no Christian Kirk. There might not be Zay Jones either. So Calvin Ridley, he might be the last wide receiver standing that gets to go up against Gators, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who, look, they've been the 4th best option for fantasy receivers over the last 8 weeks based on schedule-adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. So 58% of the fantasy points that Tampa has given up to receivers has gone to receivers that line up out wide, which even if we look at just since Christian Kirk went out with an injury, Calvin Ridley has lined up out wide 77% of the time. So the Kirk injury hasn't changed Calvin Ridley's usage or the way he lines up at all. So at some point you have to think that the targets and the air yards turn into some actual production. And I couldn't think of a better time than the fantasy semifinals in this great matchup. So Fantasy Pros Week 16, ECR has Ridley as the wide receiver 21. I've got him up at wide receiver 16 for the week.
Yeah. I like it. Calvin
I don't
Ridley.
like it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
I don't know why he wouldn't like it.
Are you playing against Calvin Ridley there, Gator? Is that why you don't like the call?
Yes.
There it is.
We are
There it
absolutely
is.
playing against Calvin Ridley. You know we are.
All right.
Don't worry, Gator. I got something for your team a little bit later.
Oh, don't you worry. You failed already. I've been watching Judge Judy. I've been watching Judge Hackett, and I need to know all of these terms
Here we
for
go.
later.
Cooking the books is
Get
already
ready.
starting, man.
All right, Rhett. We got Hunter Henry. We got Calvin Ridley. What's your busing call week 16, brother?
Fellas, I'm going to give y'all a couple options tonight because, quite frankly, we talked about Jaden Reed on the injury report this week. He might be hurt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys 2 options from the Green Bay Packers tonight. And my first call is either going to be Jaden Reed if he's active, or if not, we're going to talk about Dontavian Wicks. So first off, let's talk about why both of these are in a prime opportunity. First off, Christian Watson has been hurt. Christian Watson has been hurt most of the season. These guys have emerged and have become solid options for quarterback Jordan Love, who has been getting better and better as the year has gone on and looks really comfortable at this point in the season. Now, we talked about it earlier. Jaden Reed did not practice today with that toe injury. Like I said, if he plays, he's going to be my pick. If not, we're going to go with Wicks. So we're going to give you a 2-for-1 here and give you both reasons why both of these guys will be busting plays this week. First off, Jaden Reed comes to the week because of the injury as the ECR wide receiver 48 at Fantasy Pros. But per our sponsor, Fantasy Data, in half PPR scoring, my man is the wide receiver 26 on the year with 148.6 fantasy points. That's 10.6 fantasy points per game. Over the last 8 games, that's gone up to 97.2 fantasy points or 12.1 fantasy points per game. So he's gotten better as the year's gone on. A guy that plays a lot in the slot, he has had 66.5% of his snaps from the slot, or 328 snaps overall. And if we're being honest, the Carolina Panthers are the 6th best team against slot receivers in the league this year. But regardless of that, I feel like Jaden Reed is matchup proof in a situation like this, and here's why. His ADOT is not super high. His ADOT is 9.6 yards per target, only averages 54.7 air yards per game. However, he has had 15 red zone targets this year, which is 13th in the league, and he has 7 touchdowns. So with how many receptions he has an ungodly 11.9% touchdown rate. So he gets a lot of work on manufactured touches. So for me, it's hard to see where he fails, no matter what the matchup is. Now, Let's talk about Dontavian Wicks, who comes in as a wide receiver 54 and is a completely different guy than Jaden Reed, and coming off of that breakout game last week. 6 receptions, 97 yards against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Has a higher ADOT, 11.11 yards per target, and has a 1.87 yards per route run, which is the best in the Green Bay Packers receiving core. So he had a season high in fantasy points last week. He's emerging at the right time, but he is going to be more of a boom and bust guy. So if both play, it's still possible that both can still have solid games based off of how they're both used. But my priority is going to be Jaden Reed. But if you need a big week and you want to take a swing, go ahead and take a swing on Dontavian Wicks. I feel good about that as well. Love both of them.
I have a problem. Why do you, of all people on this show, get to have 2 picks? It's not fair.
Because you know why? Because first off, I have had far too many weeks this year where I've had a guy and frankly, they've been hurt and I haven't been able to give people good actionable advice. So what I'm doing is I'm doing it for the people, Gator. I'm not doing it for myself. I did it for them. I did it so they can have, yes, the people's champ. If you smell what the red is cooking, baby.
Well,
the red is cooking.
Wow. I was just gonna say, if I had all the time in the world to do it, I could have had 54 players too. I do on Bussin plays, but I mean, I'm trying to be fair here and let you guys.
They're on the same team.
My person call is Raheem Mostert.
Love the callback. Love the callback. Rougarou, I too need Michael Pittman to play. He did log a limited practice today. So that is a positive note. So far, our Bussin calls: Gator gave Hunter Henry, Drew Calvin Ridley, Rhett Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks. And for me, I'm going running back James Conner, Fantasy Pros ECR, running back 24. But over the last 4 weeks, he's been the RB5 in average yards after contact, RB2 in missed tackles forced, RB8 in runs over 10 yards, more than Devon Achane, Ken Walker, Bijan Robinson, Travis Etienne, and Derrick Henry. The RB1 over that span in PFF's elusive rating, which is a signature PFF stat that measures the success and impact of a runner with the ball independently of blocking. He is beating everybody. The next closest guy is nearly 30 points behind them. The RB1 in that category this week, he gets the Chicago Bears, who have been pretty decent against the position on the season, but over the last 4 weeks, they have faltered a bit. 21st worst defense over that period, allowing an average of 22.1 fantasy points per game to the running backs. The 8th worst defense in red zone defense, allowing 8.3 fantasy points per game in the red zone to running backs. 6th worst defense in defending the pass-catching running back over that time as well. Running backs are averaging 6 receptions and 50 yards per game against the Chicago Bears. With Kyler Murray under center, James Conner has seen 13 targets over the last 4 games. When Kyler Murray wasn't under center, he's seen 10 targets over 6 games. The Chicago Bears have yet to allow a running back rush for over 100 yards. So there is a little bit of hesitation there. And we've saw Emery DeMarcado bust off some decent runs for Arizona last week. But James Conner at the consensus Fantasy Pros ECR of RB24 just seems criminal. And that's why he is my Bussin play for week 16.
Love it. I mean, look, if you can have success against the San Francisco 49ers run defense the way he did last week, sign me up.
Bring
man.
it on. Bring it
Sign
on,
me up.
baby.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do you feel like the absence of Hollywood Brown would make any difference going up against the Bears and they would tee off basically on Conner with no Hollywood there?
No.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to say this is I think Michael Wilson is a guy who can possibly get some things done in the passing game Big target, big guy, can get outside, can get upfield, can run all the routes. Can possibly take some pressure off of that running game. So I'm going to say while he is not Hollywood Brown, he can take some pressure off that. And obviously you have Trey McBride, who's had a fantastic second half of this season. So
that's very fair. Because I just think that's something that needs to be brought up, even though Hollywood Brown hasn't been the greatest throughout the year, even when he's been there with Kyler, right? But there has been distraction, to some of the defenses with Hollywood. So yeah, awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So one other thing real quick to James Conner's point, shameless plug. Whenever I was on Sirius XM with Bob Harris and Michael Dempsey, I brought this up that I lost it. Where'd it go? Okay, here we go. So James Conner has averaged at least 4.2 yards per carry in all 10 of his games. No other starting running back is at 100%. Jameer Gibbs, CMC, James Cook are the only running backs who have averaged over 4.2 yards per carry in at least 60% of their games. Now, the whole 100% of their games obviously is part because he missed games due to injury. But the fact that every game he's played, he's averaged 4.2 yards per carry, and that includes a game against San Francisco. Like, the dude's just been good, man. He's been productive. So I love the call. I like the call a lot more than I like this comment from Bernsey. I could tell you that. This just makes me sick to my stomach.
And that comment for the people that are listening here, Chris Burns, who do you guys got rest of season? Jameer Gibbs or Tyler Allgeier's backup? Drew, I'm going to let you have this one.
The answer is supposed to be Bijan, bro. But everybody in the world but Arthur Smith knows that you're supposed to give Bijan the ball. Just go back to my rant 3 weeks ago or my rant 6 weeks ago. I'm not doing this again, man. I'm not doing this again.
The answer is Jameer Gibbs because Tyler Allgeier's backup is a first-round pick in Atlanta, and they all suck.
They don't suck. Their coach does, and they misuse their players. They're like, hey, watch this cool trick where I'm going to draft offensive playmakers with back-to-back first-round picks, and then I'm going to not use them all because there's no way that the teams I'm playing are going to see that coming.
Because they're horrible. They got a wide receiver, a tight end, and a running back, all first-round picks. They all are horrible. Horrible players.
The quarterback and the coach are horrible.
They're horrible.
The quarterback
and
the
ask
coach
Arthur
are horrible.
Smith. Well,
all right.
You blame it on who you want to. I'm blaming it on the player.
Look,
because
we got Bernsey with burner accounts, complimenting himself and shit, man. Oh my God, I'm sick. I'm sick to my stomach, man.
Okay, let's get back on track here. Bussin players: Hunter Henry, Calvin Ridley, Jaden Reed, or Dontavian Wicks, and James Conner. Of course, Bussin players are players that we believe are going to smash their ECR rankings. Discussing players we believe aren't going to live up to their ECR rankings. And Gator is going to lead us off with his discussing player for Week 16. And tell us why it's Bijan Ruff.
I want to change my player now. I really do want to change my player because it's really going to make you and Rougarou mad because my discussing player this week is Michael Pittman. Getting a limited practice today, he's going to have to practice at least a full practice tomorrow and Friday. But he's also got a difficult matchup this week against A.J. Terrell of the Falcons, who since week 13 has just allowed 33% reception rate. Even worse, he only allows a 42.4 passer rating when he's targeted. That's not good, Bob. Not good at all. Atlanta also only allows the fifth fewest fantasy points to wide receivers on the season. Yuck. It's not looking good. Atlanta's not a great team, but good Lord.
Thank you.
But they have
Amen, brother. Amen.
Amen.
Atlanta's defense is pretty good though when it comes to that wide receiver area. You know, they don't play with the wide receivers. You might be able to run on them. They can't run on anybody else, but you might be able to run on them, but you ain't passing on them.
You ain't wrong, man. You ain't wrong.
Oh, Michael Pittman discussing for Week 16. Drew, you hit us off with the wide receiver in your Bussin call. You're hitting us off with the wide receiver for your discussing call. This guy was the Garbo King last week. This week, you got him
was.
as the Garbo King again, but in the opposite sense. Why is this guy your discussing call for week 16, man?
Yeah, Jorge, if you're still here, look away, mute, do whatever you need to do. But there's nothing quite like telling folks that the wide receiver 3 from last week is going to stink this week. But that's where I'm at with Terry McLaurin, man. I mean, let's talk about the wide receiver 3 week that he had. You already alluded to it, Chris. He ended up with 6 receptions for 141 yards and a touchdown. But 3 of his 6 receptions, 93 of his 141 yards, and the touchdown all came once Sam Howell was benched and Jacoby Brissett came in and did what any smart quarterback would do and just feed his best pass catcher the ball. You know, I mean, that's groundbreaking shit that Jacoby Brissett decided to do. But word on the street is that Ron said that Sam Howell was benched to protect him. And so I can only imagine that he was protecting him from further embarrassment because of how bad he's been playing. But if he's truly going to be the quarterback moving forward and not Jacoby Brissett, I don't like that for Terry. I mean, Sam Howell's 22nd in the league in QBR. He's 29th in PFF passing grade. I know he throws the ball a ton, and that's great for Sam Howell. Like if you got Sam Howell as your quarterback, you love that. But he's not actually good at playing quarterback, so that's not good for his pass catchers. And so prior to Terry's big quarter with Jacoby Brissett this past week, he hadn't had a wide receiver 1 finish on the week since week 4. I mean, shit, he'd only had 4 finishes inside the top 24 wide receivers before last week. Now, on top of that, he gets a matchup against the New York Jets defense. It's been the toughest matchup for fantasy receivers based on schedule-adjusted points given up to the position. And apparently the only person that can get the better of the Jets secondary is Jalen Waddle. So if your name's not Jalen Waddle, you're probably not going to have much luck against this team. So if we get the news that Jacoby is the starter sometime this week, I would feel a little bit better about Terry, but as things stand with Sam Howell as the quarterback, I have McLaurin as the wide receiver 38 compared to his ECR wide receiver 30. And I'm trying to stay away from him if possible.
Yep, all fair. It hurts because I own a ton of Terry McLaurin, and he helped me win some weeks last week. He should have had the 2 long touchdowns, which would have just been great for his production. But you are 100% right with all the points you were hitting there with Sam Howell being the quarterback for the Washington Commanders. Rhett, we got Michael Pittman. We got Terry McLaurin. Gator mentioned at the top that you hated. Oh, wait, you got something to say, Gator?
Yeah, I just want to touch on Rigaru's comment right here where he's talking about AJ not traveling with Pittman. Here lately, he has traveled a good bit with the top wide receivers. So, you know, now he doesn't jump to the slot very often, but keep an eye on that because he has been traveling a good bit with these guys, with these number ones overall.
There you go. Brett, who's your discussing call for week 16, big guy?
All right, Drew, before I get into this, I needed to ask you one quick thing. You and our boss, man, Jorge Edwards, seem to have had a running beef, and whose side were you on in terms of tight ends?
Wait, what?
The tight end beef you and Jorge had. Who did you love or who did you hate? Tell me about it.
Jelani Woods.
Oh,
Dallas,
are you talking about the Dallas Goedert thing?
Yeah.
Oh, Dallas Goedert is my disgusting pick this week, big guy. Let's talk about it.
Okay.
All right, so look. Dallas Goedert ended the week as the ECR tight end 10, right? So
I
that's
told
fine.
you hated tight ends. I knew you hated tight ends. I freaking knew you hated tight ends.
I actually love tight ends, but we're going to talk about that later. But he enters the week as the ECR tight end 10 at Fantasy Pros. And some guys are just reputation guys. And Dallas Goedert is becoming a reputation guy. And let me tell you why. He is the tight end 18 for the year, according to fantasy data, in 0.5 PPR scoring. He is 13th in fantasy points per game at 7.5 fantasy points per game. He is not even a tight end 1 in scoring. Now, both of those numbers are below his ranking of tight end 10 for the week. And he faces the New York Giants, who are 6th best against tight ends at 7.8 fantasy points per game when adjusted for strength of schedule. In the last 2 weeks, Dallas Goedert has been tight end 27. And tight end 28, and he has only had 2 tight end 1 weeks all year. So we know who Dallas Goedert is at this point of the season. And to further go about this point, the Philadelphia Eagles are only targeting tight ends at a 17% rate, which is 25th in the league. So they're not even targeting their tight ends. As a matter of fact, A.J. Brown is tops amongst wide receivers with 32% of the Eagles team targets. That is tops in the league. Devontae Smith is getting a 23.6% target rate. That is 23rd amongst wide receivers. And Dallas Goedert is 13th among tight ends in the league at 19%. So what does that tell me? That tells me that he is the third read at best in this offense. But with Jalen Hurts being a guy who is so reliant on his legs, how often are we really getting to the third read in Philadelphia Eagles offense? So I'm just going to tell you this. It is a bad matchup. It is a tough situation with a guy who is not what he used to be. So I do not see it for Dallas Goedert.
So it's fair points, and I mean, I want to be on record here. I'm not a Dallas Goedert truther by any means. My argument during the early part of the season was you should be starting that man. He was a must-start tight end before he got hurt because of the offense he played in and where you drafted him. But, hey, you just better hope you don't have a game like your boy Juwan Johnson had this past week, because he had no issues with that New York Giants defense this past week. So he was a top 10 tight end. I'm just saying. But no, I agree. I don't, even though I was used as a segue for that segment, I also don't think you have to play Dallas Goedert this week either.
It's all up, Drew. It's all up. Man.
Jorge in the chat with, damn, Rhett, that man's got a family, man. Like, chill. You take food off the man's table, man.
Rhett was acting like he was, Darren Waller's agent, and they were him and Darren Waller and Goddard were going at to the same team at some point. He's like, no, my guy needs to be the starter, and this is why. Not that my guy is any better, but this guy sucks so bad.
No, you're not gonna come from my moon and my stars, Darren Waller. How dare you?
All right, my discussing call, another tight end, George Kittle, San Francisco 49ers, and this isn't a complete sit for me. The Fantasy Pros ECR tight end 7. He's going to see anywhere from 3 to 6 targets. My distrust comes from how well the Ravens have been against the tight end, only allowing 3 touchdowns to the position on the season against McBride, Everett, and Davis Allen. Only one tight end has gone for over 60 yards. That was Trey McBride between weeks 1 and 7. They only allowed opposing tight ends to average 4.9 fantasy points per game and 0 fantasy points per game in the red zone. Then they faltered against, like I said, against McBride. He had that big day. I believe he got 98 yards, almost the 100-yard mark. And then weeks 9 to 11, tight ends averaged only 7.3 points per game. Struggled the 2 weeks after that, letting up a touchdown to Davis Allen and Gerald Everett. They have produced better against tight ends than the tight ends producing against their defenses. Kittle is the most targeted receiver, I guess you could say, on the 49ers in the red zone. So that's where the hesitation comes a bit from completely sitting George Kittle in this matchup. It's going to come down to whether or not the Ravens are going to pinpoint that part of the offense for the 49ers. And if they do, especially in the red zone, he's going to be touchdown dependent, because he should only see, from my projection, that 3 to 6 targets. So if he catches maybe 80% of those balls, it could be 1 to 4 receptions, which could probably lead anywhere between 20, 45 to 50 yards. So not a great day for George Kittle against the Baltimore Ravens. Those are our discussing calls. Gator hit us with Michael Pittman. Drew with Terry McLaurin. Rhett hit us with Dallas Goedert. And I drove home George Kittle for our discussing plays for Week 16. Our last part of the segment, the mid guys that we think at the very least are going to hit their floor, if not smash their floor. And Gators leading it off with one of the most elite quarterbacks in the game. Oh, you're on mute there, Gator.
It was done on purpose. I did that to see if you were paying attention. I mean, you're right. Joe Flacco, one of the most elite 40-something-year-old quarterbacks out there, currently QB 18 as far as his ECR is concerned. Since week 13, Flacco has the most passing attempts, 3rd most passing completions, 2nd most passing yards, 4th most passing TDs, and the 8th highest points per game average at the QB position. He's been QB 13, 10, and 9 in that time frame. So why is he my mid? CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, both injured, both likely not to play. So it should be and probably will be Case Keenum this week under center for the Houston Texans again. If that's the case, no pun intended, I don't see Flacco and the Browns having to be that high volume passing game, throwing 40 plus times the game, for the game. Past 3 weeks, he had to do that to keep pace with the Rams, the Jaguars, and the Bears. I do believe he still gets you that 17 to 20 point range, solid QB2, solid superflex area, but that 30, that 25 plus that you've seen over the last couple weeks, where he's throwing for 44 times, getting multiple touchdowns. I just don't see that happening this week. I don't think they're going to need to. I think it's going to be more of a rushing game. So that's why he is my mid.
Yep. All fair points there. Should have at least solid QB2 finish. Yeah. For the Cleveland Browns. Guy throws it 40 plus times a game nearly. So it'd be almost impossible for him not to hit his floor. Drew, bless us with your mid play for week 16.
Yeah, I wish I knew why it took Gator. Maybe you can let me know why it took 15 weeks for Chris Godwin to be used the way he should have been used all year. But as a Chris Godwin lover,
two words for you. 2 words for you.
Yep.
Mike Evans.
Okay, so how good he's been this year has been what's been holding him back.
Well, I mean, I think Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield, they went to lunch like prior in the preseason, and I don't know how many kids they have together, but it's possible they have kids together.
So it's like the Matthew Stafford Cooper Cup breakfast.
It is, yes, the breakfast, yes, and it's, okay. And then Chris Godwin is like that girlfriend on the side that Baker was like, I can't let Mike know about you. I love you, but I can't let Mike know. And so it's taking a little bit of time. And now Mike is like, hey, what about my guy? And Baker was like, I didn't know y'all were friends.
So now Baker's down for the whole team.
Yes. And, the whole menage a trois in Tampa is good to go. It's fire.
The man tied his season high in targets. He had a season high in receptions, receiving yards, and yards per catch. And he was the wide receiver 6 on the week, and he didn't even get into the end zone. So, look, and this also makes back-to-back weeks of 11-plus targets. The production was just much better this past week. But he was also the team's first read on an insane 46% of plays. I don't know if it had something to do with Chris Godwin's girlfriend calling out the coach or what, but they made it a priority to get that man the ball. And if that trend, along with his high target share, continues, he could be in for a big week. He gets to play the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary. That's been the 10th best matchup for fantasy receivers over the last 5 weeks based on schedule-adjusted fantasy points given up to the position. And the split is pretty even based on points given up to slot receivers versus receivers that line up out wide. And Godwin, he moves around a good amount as well. He plays out wide 56% of the time and in the slot 44% of the time over the last 5 weeks. So for him, it doesn't matter where the fantasy points are given up because he's going to be there one way or the other eventually as the game goes on. So he's got what expects to be a tough matchup next week against New Orleans. But this week, I think, is a solid play to at least help you get to championship weeks. Fantasy Pros Week 16 ECR has Godwin as the wide receiver 28, but I've got him in wide receiver 2 territory. I've got him as the wide receiver 22 this week.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Finally, we get the production that we've been waiting for out of Chris Godwin all year. And what better time for us to get that production than the fantasy playoffs? Rhett, you got a mid pick for us, man?
I do, and first I need Gator to realize that he needs to get that little flag he waved a while ago back out because we're going to Tampa double dip right now, baby. Let's talk about the GOAT, the quarterback, the heir apparent to Tom Brady. Let's talk Baker Mayfield against the Jacksonville Jaguars, man. Enters the week as the ECR quarterback 11, playing that Jacksonville defense that is 30th in schedule-adjusted fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks at 21.8 points per game. Oh, boy, we are in for a Baker Mayfield good time, and they're going against a quarterback that has had 6 QB1 finishes in the last 8 weeks and peaked last week as your NFC player of the week offensively with 381 yards and 4 touchdowns and finished as QB2 overall last week. And he's been a QB1 over these past 8 weeks without a notable rushing floor, guys. So that just lets me know that my man is cooking all over the place. And that starts with how much trust Tampa has put into him. He has 466 pass attempts on the year. That is 8th in the league. He has 63 deep attempts. That is 1st in the league. He has 56 red zone attempts. That is 10th in the league. He has 3,831 air yards. That is 4th in the league. And it could be better because Tampa pass catchers are 3rd in the league with 24 drops this year, you guys. I mean, it is unbelievable what he's done with receivers letting him down. And it is a Jacksonville defense that has not been a defensive or special teams one. Oh, they've only been one once since week 10. Have they been a defense one? They haven't been playable. Baker Mayfield has. I love the spot for him. I love the confidence they have in him. I love that they're manufacturing touches for Chris Godwin. I love Rashad White. I love everything about the way they're working with Baker right now. And so they've got everything to play for because they're still in the hunt for the division. So I expect them to go for it this week and throw the ball all over the place. You're going to do far worse than Baker Mayfield as a quarterback this week.
Rhett, I'm going to disagree with you. They're not in the hunt for the division. They're in the division lead right now. So just keep that in the back of your mind there. Baker Mayfield, the one thing I will give you on Baker Mayfield this year that he has, what has helped him so much this year is he's not turning the ball over on a regular. 24-8 when it touchdown to interception, So that's the one thing that he's not doing. He's not trying to force the ball. Of course, now I know you brought the drops, but the other side of that coin is his receivers that are catching the ball are getting the 50-50 balls, which is nice to see. That's different than what we've had in the past since Jameis Winston wasn't, where they didn't care about the 50-50 ball before.
Yep, agreed. Baker Mayfield is at the very least gonna hit his fantasy floor against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You heard it here on Fourth and Frames. My mid-call for the week is wide receiver Jordan Addison of the Minnesota Vikings. If Dobbs was starting, I'd be a little bit more hesitant. With Jefferson back and Dobbs under center, he sees a 9% target share. With Jefferson back and Mullins under center, he saw an 18% target share. Granted, that is a limited sample size of one game for Nick Mullins, but Mullins does have that moxie that Josh Dobbs was missing a little bit there down the stretch with the Minnesota Vikings. He has that ability to be that little bit of that gunslinger quarterback, a little bit of that improviser, and we saw that on that play where he threw it across body for the touchdown to Jordan Addison, that no, yes play that he made last week. 6 targets, 6 receptions, 111 yards, and of course the 2 touchdowns last week with Mullins under center. This week he draws the Detroit Lions. Over the last 6 games have been the 7th best matchup for fantasy wide receivers. 3rd best matchup for fantasy wide receivers in putting up points in the red zone. He is tied with TJ Hawkinson in team total red zone targets. He's been the guy for the wide receivers. Granted, Justin Jefferson has been out for an extended period of time. With Jefferson back, his splits of lining up in the slot and lining up out wide have been pretty much 50-50 in the 2 games. Lions, over the span of the last 6 weeks, 4th most points to the wide receivers. So the wide receivers lining up out wide, and versus the slot, the 9th most fantasy points per game. So wide receivers, no matter where they are lining up on the field, have been eating against the Detroit Lions. It's a great matchup for Jordan Addison, who should hit that mid to low wide receiver 2 range, considering I can't believe I'm saying this, but I mean, the guy I'm considering starting Nick Mullins over is an MVP candidate. And yes, I'm considering starting Nick Mullins against the Detroit Lions over Brock Purdy versus the Baltimore Ravens. Gator, am I crazy for that move?
I mean, it's cold in Canada, isn't it?
It is cold in Canada.
Yeah,
right now, it's as cold as ever.
Yeah, I think you're a little crazy for doing that. I mean, it's Brock Purdy. I think you until he doesn't do it, you got to keep putting him on there, right? It's
Yeah.
Nick Mullins. I mean, you're talking about a guy that, who is he? Where'd he come from? What's his, can we get his middle name and make sure he's, legally allowed to play NFL football? I just don't know.
His middle name is Nick, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. So his first name is Saint.
No, Big
Oh,
Nick.
yeah. I hear you. Yeah. It's only going to be Big Nick Mullins if.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
he had
I
a
think
decent
it's-
outing last week.
Yeah, it's still Brock Purdy for me.
It's got to be,
With
right?
yeah, it's with the weapons that Brock's got. You there's no
Yeah.
way you can pivot at this point. You got to, if you're going to go down, the captain's got to go down with the ship.
Oh, man. I got a ton of teams in the semis, so I'm not afraid to just mix it up a bit, just so all my teams don't go down with the Brock Purdy ship where I'm starting Brock Purdy, which is quite a bit of Brock Purdy, which is making me a little nervous.
I get it there. So then pick one or two that you're gonna
Just
swap it up on.
pivot. Yeah. All right.
And just for the record, we're going to go ahead and give you the full Nick Mullins name. It is actually Nicholas Clayton Mullins, born March 21st, 1995, ladies and gentlemen. Shout out Wikipedia.
Wow, he's
Shout out
old.
Wikipedia.
He's almost as old as Flacco. And the only reason I say that is, I mean, most of these players now are born in the 2000s.
Sure.
He's
Yeah.
almost ancient. You might want to go get his mummified wrap ready to go.
All right. That is Bussin discussing and mid for week 16. Our Bussin calls Hunter Henry, Calvin Ridley, Jaden Reed, or Dontavian Wicks, and James Conner. Our discussing plays Michael Pittman, Terry McLaurin, Dallas Goedert, and George Kittle. And our mid plays Joe Flacco, Chris Godwin, Baker Mayfield, Jordan Addison. To everyone that's watching, we appreciate you all. Like the stream, subscribe to the channel, drop a question in the chat. We have Gator J here, producer extraordinaire, host of the Waiver Wire Show on Tuesday nights. You can find them also on Sundays. This Sunday's our schedule is a bit different. I believe the pregame show is going to move over to Friday. I think that is for anyone that's looking for that last minute advice before the Saturday games, because we have Saturday games before the Sunday games and ultimately before the Monday games.
Mm-hmm.
Hop into the Fantasy and Frames pregame show, and everyone, or mostly everyone, will be there to help you out and give you league winning advice. Fellas, great segment, but it's about to get a little more hot in here as we pivot to Master Debate. All right, here we are, Gator. You've seen this a bunch of times. You know how this works. You're going to be our guest judge here tonight. One of me, Rhett, or Drew is going to present a situation to the other two hosts. And then those two hosts are going to duke it out on what side they are taking. And then, of course, you, Gator, special guest judge, along with the person presenting, and the viewers or listeners are going to pick the winning side. And this week, this guy's been killing us, Drew, over the last couple weeks. Rhett, you get to start from the top, man.
All right, so what I want to do is I want to have you guys jump into the college game a little bit tonight. Not just that, but we're kind of, combines coming up soon, Senior Bowl's coming up soon. There's going to be a lot of hot debate over who that QB2 in this draft class is going to be. So what I want to do is I want to have you guys debate that when it's all said and done, when the smoke clears, who is going to be the QB2 in this draft class? Is it going to be the guy that thought it was going to be all along in Drake May, or the up-and-comer who's coming off of a big season in Jaden Daniels? Chris, I'm going to go ahead and give you the floor first because Drew feels like we're attacking him, so I want to give him the opportunity to retort.
All right. It's funny that you use the term up and comer, considering that Jaden Daniels is in his 5th year of college football quarterback play. And if you look at the two, Drake May's breakout came as a first-year starter at UNC and is entering the NFL as a redshirt sophomore, opposed to Jaden Daniels, fifth year at LSU, entering the NFL as a senior. The same age that Lamar Jackson was winning the NFL MVP is the same age that Jaden Daniels is entering the NFL. Yes, I will give Jaden Daniels this past year. It was historic year. He is the Heisman winner, but he needed a projected top 15 pick wide receiver in Malik Neighbors, and of course, Brian Thomas Jr. there, who's also getting a ton of NFL draft buzz. No slouch. At the beginning of the season, it was Drake May versus Caleb Williams. Middle of the season, Drake May versus Caleb Williams. And at least for me, right now, it's Drake May versus Caleb Williams for the first quarterback taken off the board. And some people have compared Jaden Daniels to Lamar Jackson, and that's just not a good comparison, in my opinion, because Lamar Jackson very much underperformed Jaden Daniels when he was at Louisville. His passer rating, 146 compared to Jaden's 208. Lamar's average per carry, 6.3. Jaden Daniels, 8.5. Lamar averaged 8.5 yards per pass attempt with a 2.7 to 1 touchdown to interception ratio. Jaden Daniels, 11.7 yards with a 10 to 1 touchdown interception ratio. Again, if you're just looking based on numbers, Jaden Reed is going to smash Drake May this year. But if you watch the tape, watch the actual... Oh, sorry, Jaden Daniels. My bad. Daniels never throws on time unless it's his first read. He's constantly late on throws. That problem is entirely fixable, but nobody seems to really want to acknowledge that it's a problem for Daniels. He can make throws with anticipation, but he hangs on to his first read way too long. He's got a slender lower body, which is going to lead to issues when he decides to panic scramble. The combine is going to show the true colors and really going to separate the two. He's been in college so long that he threw a touchdown pass to Brandon Ayuk at Arizona State. He's got a beautiful deep ball. I will give him that, but he scrambled any opportunity he had. He was chasing the Heisman. He was padding those stats. He knew what he was doing against Georgia Southern. And it was that game that really solidified his Heisman Trophy winning. When I think he rushed for 3, threw for 3. He just had that such big game. But for me, May is one of the career record holders for the Tar Heels with 2 seasons of production. He threw for over 8,000 yards, 63 touchdown passes, and will be a surefire first rounder. Not saying that Jaden Daniels won't. Of the 3 signal callers mentioned, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, and Drake May. May checks all the boxes in terms of size, arm strength, and ability. If you're telling me I got Daniels and I got May, and they both do the same things really well, I'm going to take the guy that's produced 2 years in college at a much earlier age over a guy who needed a potential wide receiver 2 in the draft, and Brian Thomas on LSU. Give me Drake May, man. This is easy.
Is this where I pick in now? Usually there's a transition, but if you want me to just go right into it, I will. So I'll use this comment on the screen as a perfect little segue, because damn, y'all should have a college fantasy football podcast in 2024. Very knowledgeable. Hey, fun fact, we've got one coming for you. And guess who is the director of college fantasy football content for Fantasy and Frames? The guy that I'm having to freaking argue against in this college fantasy football argument. So now that we got that out of the way, and you guys are clearly trying to cook the books against me in this debate segment, I don't know why you guys are wanting to do that, but I'll just start my argument by saying that it was Chris Battistell himself that was the first person that I heard mention that he was considering having Jaden Daniels as his quarterback 2 earlier this season. It wasn't me. It wasn't anybody else. It was Chris Battistell that was like, hey, I think he might be quarterback too. I thought that was wild at the time because all the talk had been Caleb Williams or Drake May. They're locked in as the top 2 quarterbacks in the class. But since he's the director of college fantasy football content for Fantasy and Frames, he's ahead of the trends. And with me being only a dynasty guy and not in like the Devy or the college fantasy world, it takes me a little bit to really dig into the numbers and the tape for NFL draft eligible players. I'm a little late to the party compared to Chris. So, but now that I've had some time to do so, it turns out Chris was right all along. It is Jaden Daniels. He had 3,812 passing yards and 11.7 yards per attempt compared to 3,608 passing yards and 8.5 yards per attempt for Drake May. Jaden Daniels had 40 passing touchdowns compared to 24 for Drake May, and May also threw 9 interceptions compared to 4 that Daniels accumulated. 9 to 4, that accuracy. I don't know. It ain't it, man.
Can we at least compare their good year against good year?
Do you want to
at least do that?
I don't know if we can do that, but I can compare strength of schedule for you though, because LSU had the 10th most difficult strength of schedule this year based on the Football Power Index, which uses expected point margin versus the average opponent on a neutral field. Well, North Carolina was down at 26th in the same metric. So Jaden Daniels had better passing numbers in a tougher schedule and a tougher conference. Meanwhile, Drake May, who, hey, I know you mentioned that he's younger, which is great for fantasy, which is great for dynasty. He is 2 years younger than Jaden Daniels, but we've had these 1-year guys pop off before. We've had the Cam Newtons. Joe Burrow didn't really get his shot to really shine until late in his career. They've worked out all right. All right, so like that's not important. Along with the passing numbers, I would say is more surprising because I think you would expect Drake May to be the better passer, but the least surprising side is that Jaden Daniels, he was a better rusher as well. 1,100 plus rushing yards on 135 carries compared to only 449 rushing yards on 112 carries for Drake May. And that's the part I want to drive home. We all know how valuable a solid rushing floor is for fantasy quarterbacks. And while I don't like the Lamar Jackson overall comparisons that you mentioned, I do think he could be the best rushing quarterback to enter the NFL since Lamar, with Anthony Richardson being in that discussion as well. That's not to take in the passing side of it, but just strictly from a rushing standpoint, I do think they are similar on that side. So now, not only does he have a better deep ball than Drake May, as you mentioned, I think it might be the best in the entire quarterback class.
It's pretty.
On passes over 20 air yards this year, he had 20 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, and 11 of those 20 air touchdowns were 30-plus yards downfield. And even after watching the Heisman season that he had, looking at the numbers that he put up, the only reservation that I really had left was the draft capital. And while we're still a little while from knowing how that's really going to shake out, the industry mocks, the chatter that I've been reading has him soaring up draft boards to the point to where it seems like he's going to be a top 10 draft pick. Again, it's speculation at best, but that's a big thing for me is not, I don't want my dynasty quarterbacks to be first round quarterbacks. I want them to be in the top 10 of the first round. Those past history shows us that quarterbacks drafted in the top 10, they have a longer leash. The success for longevity, is typically better if they're drafted in that area. So if he has this production mixed with the draft capital, I think that he's a safe bet as far as that goes. He has the arm strength. Whenever you decide between these two quarterbacks, he was more productive in his most recent year. He's a better he was a better passer and rusher.
He's got two freaking weapons that are unreal.
Okay,
who is Drake May throwing it to?
I better not hear you say a good word about Devontae Walker. Don't say a single nice word about it. No, you don't get to say that. No, he sucks. Everybody that Drake May throws,
but he also came in late. He came in late.
Everybody that Walker throws to sucks. Don't worry about it. So if I'm picking between these two guys, give me the guy that has the deep ball accuracy. He's going to give you big plays with his arm. He's one of, if not the best rushing quarterback to enter the league in the last 4 or 5 years, in which we know how important that is for fantasy. And now he's going to get the draft capital because of his Heisman season. So whenever I'm talking about for fantasy football purposes, give me the guy that can generate big plays with his arm and generate big plays with his legs.
I like how you gave us the Jaden Daniels rushing yardage, but left out that Drake May scored one less rushing touchdown than him last year.
He had like 500 less rushing yards. So he got one more tush push.
TDs.
He got one more tush push, and we're gonna talk about that.
I just like how you left that out, though. You got mad at Rhett for box score stats, and then you just hit me with box score stats.
Because me and Rhett were arguing.
That's how he won last week, right?
Jaden Daniels and Drake May had the same amount of games this year, and Jaden Daniels had a higher rushing yard per attempt and double the rushing yards on just a few more attempts.
That's all he did. It's all he did was get the ball.
That's all he did. But he also had more passing yards than Drake May this year. But all he did was run. This year. Right. Okay.
All right.
4,300 yards.
I'm putting. Listen.
If only Drake May could have declared for the draft last year.
As the judge, I can do this. As the judge. All right. Great arguments on both sides. Rhett, I mean, I think you have to agree, right? They both, for somebody that walks into this and goes, I don't know that much about college football, and I'm going up against, the director of college football for Fantasy and Frames. I mean, I think Drew brought it.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff for sure.
He did.
Yeah, but I am going to take Drew on this argument because I do like Jaden Daniels, and I do like the fact that, number one, yes, he does have better weapons, but if you compare what Jaden Daniels did this year with those weapons, and then you look at what Drake May did with the weapons that he had last year, I still like Jaden
Better
Daniels.
numbers for Drake May.
Correct.
It's unreal.
Correct.
More passing touchdowns,
but he didn't have the deep ball accuracy.
Didn't
have the deep ball accuracy. And
yes, he did.
Not
he
better.
was getting touchdowns like crazy.
Drew's the captain now.
Drew is the captain of fantasy football now, as far as I'm concerned. Jorge, make that happen. We are kicking Chris Bastow out of the chair.
Chris, if you would like to join my college fantasy football team at Fantasy and Frames, you're more than welcome to join me.
I will. Make sure to bring all my Jaden Daniels. Unreal. What a bum. All right.
Look, Chris was so
bullshit. I hope you guys know it's bullshit. Jaden Daniels is not QB2. What's the film? Go.
It's gonna change. It'll change. Jaden Daniels, right now, in my opinion, he should be QB2, but it will change between
How
now.
many senior quarterbacks have been successful in the NFL?
Again, like I said, it will change between now and draft time. It'll change. You might see two other quarterbacks enter the realm of that QB2, QB3 area that we haven't been talking about. One of them out of Oregon.
Bo Nix.
Oh
God. All right.
You might.
Go ahead, Drew.
Oh, is it my turn now? Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you one that is just for week 16 for Chris and Rhett. I'm going to give you a wide receiver flex off, two guys that are in that wide receiver 3 territory trying to decide who should be getting started in week 16. So, Chris, you're going to tell us why Adam Thielen is the better play. Rhett, you're going to tell us why Curtis Samuel's a better play. I think Chris might need some time to cool off. So, Rhett, I'm going to let you go ahead and go first, and you let us know why you feel it's Curtis Samuel.
I appreciate you doing that for Chris because he's in full tilt mode right now. So let's just go ahead and let's talk Curtis Samuel and why he's better than Adam Thielen. So first off, we're talking about two slot guys. If you're looking at the season-long numbers, the raw numbers are going to tell you that Adam Thielen is the better play for the season. And if you look at the matchup, you might even say that Adam Thielen has the better matchup. But with the way things are as they currently stand, I am taking Curtis Samuel, and here is why. After a strong start, Adam Thielen has tapered off tremendously, and in the last 3 games, Curtis Samuel has been the better player by far. Adam Thielen, 12 catches, 142 yards, no touchdowns, 20.2 fantasy points and half-point PPR. Curtis Samuel, 18 catches, 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, 41.6 fantasy points in the same format. Okay, so you're saying, all right, it's 3 games. What's the big deal? Chris, you want to go back further? Let's go back further. 4 weeks. Curtis Samuel, 42.6 points. Adam Thielen, 20.9. 6 weeks, Curtis Samuel, 48.9 points. Adam Thielen, 39.5. 8 weeks, Curtis Samuel, 65.1. Adam Thielen, 56.1. 9 weeks, Curtis Samuel, 80.6. Adam Thielen, 79.5. So after well over half a season, Curtis Samuel has been more productive. And we can even take it to touchdowns. Curtis Samuel, 4 total touchdowns in that time span. Adam Thielen, 1 touchdown. So what does it mean with Adam Thielen? We're talking about a guy who, despite these great raw numbers, has been buoyed by an early season renaissance. And he's also playing on one of the worst offenses in football, which is now giving Chuba Hubbard 25 touches a game. So the passing game is not really there anymore. And with the Washington Commanders playing the New York Jets this week, those outside receivers will be blanketed, which tells me either Sam Howell or Jacoby Brissett is going to be peppering that slot spot, which will be occupied by my boy Curtis Samuel. So I'm going to trust the offensive situation this week with Sauce Gardner and that other cornerback. I'm going to trust the production. I'm going to take Curtis Samuel.
The other cornerback. Put some respect on his name, because that other cornerback is only letting up 0.16 fantasy points per route run. That's not that great, Bob. And the other cornerback that he's facing, DJ Reed, 0.19 fantasy points per route run. Now, if you want to go over and look at the ageless wonder in Adam Thielen, he draws Eric Stokes of the Green Bay Packers. What does he allow per route run? 0.58 fantasy points. And if he pivots from Eric Stokes and goes to Keyshawn Nixon, 0.27 fantasy points per route run. And if they want to get frisky and put Valentine on Adam Thielen, 0.21 fantasy points per route run. But most importantly is that matchup versus Eric Stokes, who has a 100% catch rate for opposing wide receivers. If the Carolina Panthers are smart at all, which we all know as a Saints fan, 2 Saints fans and a Bucs fan, they are absolutely not. They will get the ball to Adam Thielen often and early. And if you look at the matchups for Curtis Samuel, who lines up mainly as a slot wide receiver and sometimes out wide for the Washington Commanders, the New York Jets have been great against the slot wide receivers recently between weeks 10 and 15. I got the numbers here. Against slot wide receivers have only allowed 9.8 fantasy points for. So that's not very good. Beginning of the season, the out wide receiver was being shut down by the New York Jets and the inside wide receiver was eating. But that seems to have flipped a little bit over the past few weeks with the outside wide receiver, like Drew said, specifically guys named Jalen Waddle have been eating against the New York Jets. And then if you're breaking down the players, go ahead.
Okay, I would also like to make the rebuttal that you're talking about outside receivers like Jalen Waddle. So one of the most athletic receivers in the game. Got it. Go ahead. Please continue.
Yeah. Outside wide receiver Jalen Waddle. I mean, they're wide receivers in the NFL. They're all athletes at the end of the day. Adam Thielen, the guy you're talking about, I can't even remember his name, Curtis Samuel. If you're looking at between weeks 11 and 15, the routes run dominated by Adam Thielen, 92% of the routes run, of the team routes run, as opposed to Curtis Samuel's 58. Curtis Samuel is a game situation wide receiver. He's not on the field a whole lot as compared to Adam Thielen, which is on the field almost 100% of the snaps. And really in fantasy, your best ability is availability. And if Curtis Samuel isn't available to be on the field for your fantasy rosters, what points is he really going to be putting up for you? The Green Bay Packers over the last 6 weeks, the fourth best matchup for opposing wide receivers, allowing 36.9 points per game to the wide receiver and 7.2 red zone points per game to the wide receivers. Adam Thielen is a must start this week against the Green Bay Packers over Curtis Samuel, who has a bad matchup against the New York Jets.
All right, Gator, the floor is yours.
I when I first saw these two on the show sheet, I was like, okay, I already knew who's winning this. And then I went and looked at the matchup, and it was like, yeah, okay, that's not happening. I just don't know that you can trust a player that plays or that is got the matchup when you got DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner going up against them. So it's Adam Thielen for me on this particular one. When you're talking about Curtis Samuel against Adam Thielen here, and strictly, it is 100% this week, week 16, as Drew laid it out. It is this week. Which one are you taking this week?
Yep.
100%. It is Adam Thielen over Curtis Samuel this week.
Whew. We got a question from Jelly of the Month. Guys, what's your favorite jelly before we get to the question?
Straw.
Grape jelly.
Strawberry.
Straw. Yeah. Mine's that booty jelly. Need a QB since not playing Howell versus the Jets. Waivers run tonight. What order? Baker versus Jacksonville, Love versus Carolina, or Mullins versus Detroit? Gator, who you got?
So he wants to put it in. Okay, I'll put it in this order. It's Love versus Carolina and Baker versus Jacksonville. And then Mullen versus Detroit. I mean, I know Detroit's not a great defense, but when you're looking at Love versus Carolina, that's worst defense you've got sitting there. Jacksonville hasn't been very good against the pass here lately. So give me, and then of course Baker just like peppers, these two guys, Mike Godwin, no, Chris Evans. What's the guy's names? For Tampa,
it would be Mike Evans and mid player.
That's the ones.
Chris
That's the ones. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
No, so I think for me, Baker is the clear number one here. He gets to play Jacksonville over the last 8 weeks. They've been the fourth best matchup for fantasy quarterbacks. Where it gets interesting is if you miss out on Baker. Jordan Love plays Carolina, who they're a bad team, but they're not. That doesn't mean they're a good matchup for quarterbacks, though. They've actually been the number one defense against fantasy quarterbacks over the last 8 weeks. They're giving up the least amount of schedule adjusted fantasy points to the quarterback position. So, do you want to take the quarterback that has proved more throughout this year, but has a really difficult matchup against Carolina on paper, or do you want to take the guy Nick Mullins, who he's got the better weapons, he's got the better matchup against Detroit? So, I think. If it was me, I'm putting all of my chips in on Baker against Jacksonville. I think he's a great play this week, and I don't because I don't want to have to make that decision between Jordan Love in a bad matchup or Nick Mullins in a good matchup. I would just I would rather stay away from that.
Drew, if Jelly of the Month would have been paying attention to the Tuesday Night Waiver Wire show, even up until like 4 weeks ago.
4 or 5 weeks ago.
Baker would not be on his waiver wire right now. He'd be on his bench and he wouldn't have these problems.
You guys highlighted him several times. We've got another question too, Rhett. Before we move on to the other question, Baker, Jordan Love, Mullins, you have a guy that you're sold on more than the other?
I've already profiled Baker Mayfield this week. I'm going to go with Baker in that situation.
Yep. Just rewind the show a little bit. You can hear why Rhett thinks that Baker's a great call. So one other question here. I'm facing CMC, Amon-Ra, AJ, and Rashad White. Need some tips.
That's vague, and that's
Find out his password and reset his lineup.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, CMC's the ultimate cheat code at running back. Amon-Ra is a top wide receiver one with a great matchup this week. AJ Brown, another, him and Devontae Smith have been pretty close in production since their bye, and then Rashad White, the usage has just been unreal. So I mean, look, we don't know anything else about your team, but I would just say I would set the highest upside lineup possible based on whoever's in your roster on your bench, because you're going to need all the points this week against the team you're facing.
Yeah, you're facing somebody like that. I think it's truly don't go for floor. This is where the matchup requires you to absolutely throw anybody in there that can possibly get you that 15 to 25 to 30 point games. Don't settle for those 10, 12 point games. Just go all in.
Yeah, he's got Adams and Ayuk as his wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, respectively.
And Devontae Adams has Kansas City this week. Who I mean, Chris, you've mentioned a few times that outside receivers see some success against Kansas City, but overall they've been the 4th toughest matchup for fantasy receivers. And then San Francisco, they get Baltimore. They've been the 12th toughest matchup for fantasy receivers over the last 8 weeks. So need 2 running backs and a flex. Got Aaron Jones, Chuba Hubbard, Kenneth Walker, Monty, and Amari Cooper. I don't know, Rhett, do you have 2 running backs and a flex that you would pick out of that?
I'm going to go ahead and say that if you're looking for a high ceiling, like we mentioned earlier, Chuba Hubbard, since Frank Wright and Deuce Staley has been fired, has been averaging 25 touches a game. So if you're looking for upside, a guy who's getting 25 touches a game is going to be a guy who's going to do that for you. Amari Cooper being on a team that has thrown the ball 40 times a game for the past 3 weeks feels like, even though Gator said there could be a chance that it's more of a running game this week, there is still also a chance that this is their offense now with Joe Flacco under center, and they might still throw it 40 times a week. So I would definitely say those 2. And then if you want to go for somebody who might be able to snake you a couple touchdowns, I'd maybe say David Montgomery in that situation.
I'd probably go Kenny Walker there, man. He looked great last week.
Yeah, I think
if they continue to give him that,
man,
if they continue to give him that ball.
My only concern there is, like I brought up about Joe Flacco. If this turns into a running game, Amari Cooper is, unless it's early, it's going to be very little that he's going to get. I mean, it's possible he can get it early. I do not mind the Hubbard play. Hubbard's getting a lot of looks.
Yeah,
Hubbard's the one must out of that.
Yeah, I think Hubbard's an absolute smash.
I think Hubbard and Walker are both in that category, honestly. Like I'm especially if I'm chasing upside this week, there's no way I'm not starting Kenneth Walker, because Kenneth Walker's the only guy on this list that can bust one for 80 yards and take it to the house. Yeah, like he's the only guy with that kind of
in that same sense. In that same sense, I think it's Aaron Jones, Hubbard, and Kenneth Walker that I'm looking at out of these.
Ooh, I don't know if I go Jones. I like the Cooper.
Well, here's the. I mean, I understand the Cooper call but again, it's all game script. That's what I'm thinking there. The Monty pick is just solid floor, but the ceiling's not there right now, and so that's why I mean. Aaron Jones, the floor, there may not be a floor for Aaron Jones, but the ceiling is there.
Yep. That's fair.
Round out the ceiling quarterback. Dak or Mahomes. So Dak against Miami or Mahomes against Vegas.
All right, for me, it's going to be Dak against Miami, because that's just going to be a throw the ball all over the yard game. It's going to be throw. Tony Pollard, who? We don't even know that guy. We left him in Dallas, because it's just going to be throw the ball. Look, Tyreek Hill sat out last week for one reason and one reason only. It wasn't that he couldn't play. It was that he wanted to play this game.
Yeah, if he plays this one, man.
But hey, Mahomes is no slouch. His only QB1 finish over the last 6 weeks has been against the Las Vegas Raiders. So that's also something to keep note of. The Vegas
Raiders also have scored like 13 points in the last 2-3 weeks, whatever it is combined.
Yeah.
It's not been.
So the question is, chasing the highest ceiling, like you said, Gator. Dak's probably going to have the highest ceiling because of who he's playing. So you're probably going Dak there.
And don't trust that what they did last week against Buffalo is going to happen again.
Yeah.
Not in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Wide receiver 3, if Pittman's out, pick up Noah Brown, Curtis Samuel, or Tyler Boyd. Rhett?
I would probably rank those. Yeah, I'd probably rank those Noah Brown, Tyler Boyd, and ironically Curtis Samuel. Just because, Noah Brown coming off a big game last week, 8 catches, 85 yards. Tyler Boyd with no Jamar Chase is going to have more opportunity. So Curtis Samuel is actually third in that pecking order right there. Maybe I should have chosen one of those 2 for this debate just now. I don't know.
Great calls there. All right, we got one more debate subject for Drew and Rhett Gator, and they're going to be debating dynasty quarterbacks. Who is the better asset between the two for dynasty purposes now, Gator? Make sure you keep that in mind. dynasty purposes. And they are going to be debating Patrick Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. And Drew, you get to go first, big guy.
I knew you were going to make me go first. Now, look, I love Lamar, man. I really do. He might be my favorite NFL player that doesn't play on the Rams, but are we really asking if there's a better dynasty asset than the guy that's finished as a top 4 quarterback 4 out of the last 5 years since becoming a starter and is currently the quarterback 6 in what most would consider a down year? Now, meanwhile, Lamar Jackson, he only has 1 finish inside the top 4 since 2019, which was his MVP year that he went crazy. And that's even with using fantasy points per game and not total fantasy points, because I know Lamar, he only played 12 games in 2022 and 2021, and I don't want to play the injury card. That's not how I play fantasy football. So even taking that out, Patrick Mahomes still has more top 4 finishes at the quarterback position. And Lamar's an incredible threat on the ground. There's no doubt about it. But he doesn't give you the production as a passer that Mahomes will. His MVP season was the only time in his career that he's thrown more than 30 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Mahomes has had 30-plus touchdowns every year except for 1 since he's been the starter. And he already has 25 this year with 3 games left to play. So maybe it's hopeful wishing on my end, but I think he's going to hit 30 on this year as well. And I get that Travis Kelce is getting old. I'm sure Rhett's going to point out his decline, but even last year with essentially only Travis Kelce and a bunch of randos at receiver, he was the overall quarterback 1 in fantasy. And now you fast forward to this year, Rashee Rice has started to emerge as the first real threat at receiver this team has had since they traded Tyreek. And Kelce or no Kelce, he's still the most talented quarterback in the league, and he's being coached by arguably the best offensive mind that this league has ever seen, in my humble opinion. And while the outlook of the offensive weapons might not look great for Kansas City right now, if you consider Travis Kelce's age, Kansas City, they've historically performed well in the NFL draft in terms of finding talent. I mean, they did find Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice and Patrick Mahomes. So I think that they can find options to replenish this offense once Kelce is past his prime, even though I think he has another year or 2 left. And then if you're going to tell me that guys aren't going to be willing to take a little bit of a discount to come play with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and have a shot at the Super Bowl every year, if there's not a team they're willing to do that for, I don't know who they would be. I mean, I think that they're not going to have much of an issue finding guys for Mahomes to throw to. And I think that this year has been kind of a wake-up call that they have to improve those pass catchers. But again, even though the pass catchers have been poor, he's still the quarterback 6 on the year. Still, want to point that out. Lamar might be a couple years younger, but Mahomes has already consistently been a more productive fantasy quarterback, and I believe that's going to be the case moving forward as well. Not only do I think Mahomes is the better dynasty asset, I don't even think they're in the same tier. I'm sorry, Lamar, but give me my homeboy.
All right. Rhett.
Interesting you bring up all the things I just talked about, because we are going to start with the age thing, because age is a big deciding factor in dynasty. And last time I checked, Lamar Jackson, 26 years old, Patrick Mahomes, 28 years old. So we have at least 2 extra years of dynasty production ahead for Lamar Jackson. And we're talking about this season, which, by the way, we are currently sitting in this season, which currently factors into dynasty. And we're not talking about the past. We're talking about the present and the future. By the way, Mr. Drew Scott, fantasy points per game, Lamar Jackson 19.4 versus Patrick Mahomes is 18. Interceptions, Patrick Mahomes has had 13 interceptions this year versus Lamar Jackson 7. And rushing yards, which you seem to downplay for some reason, even though earlier in this show you talked about with Jaden Daniels how much rushing yards matter for quarterbacks in fantasy football. Lamar Jackson, I know we said we're not talking about the past, but he has a 1,200-yard season on the record with another.
I know what I said. We're not talking about the past, but I'm going to talk about the past.
But let's talk about the present, because he has 741 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns this year versus Patrick Mahomes with 334 yards and no touchdowns. Completion percentage advantage Mahomes, but negligible, 67.4 versus 66.3. And
now read the passing touchdown.
If what was that?
What?
Read the passing touchdowns?
Yeah.
I think I believe that number is somewhere around 25 to 17. But anyway, let's keep rolling. Okay. Lamar Jackson is actually improving as a passer. He's going to set a career high this season in passing yards and completion percentage. And yes, we're going to point to the 2019 MVP season where he threw for 36 touchdowns. that was one of those unsustainable QB rate touchdown rates that we will probably never see again from any quarterback, Patrick Mahomes or anybody. So Patrick Mahomes is on track right now for the worst season of his career. And certainly going forward, if we're talking about current players on current teams, Lamar Jackson's roster is in better shape. Zay Flowers will be back. Rashad Bateman will be back. Mark Andrews will be back. The running game is going to be fine. Give me Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell, J.K. Dobbins.
Edwards is a free agent.
Okay, he's coming back. Anyway, take your pick. For Patrick Mahomes, his receiving core is in flux. Yes, Rashee Rice is nice. Yes, you called my bluff. We're talking about Travis Kelce in the retirement. But in terms of what he currently has, you cannot rebuild an entire receiver room in an offseason. Sky Moore is ass.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney is ass.
Yeah.
MVS is ass.
Yeah.
Isaiah Pacheco is a very good player, and I'm going to say that they might have a slight advantage at the running back position, but he don't really catch passes, dog. So I like the trajectory of where Lamar Jackson is going. I think Patrick Mahomes is a very, very good player. Obviously, they're both great players. But
yeah,
where he's going right now, and with the rushing upside, which we have to admit, even if those legs decline on Lamar Jackson in the next few years, which is a likely scenario, where do we go? Do we go from 900 rushing yards to 550 rushing yards, which would still be better than anything Patrick Mahomes would do in a given season? I mean, with a guy who is getting better as a passer and will always be better as a rusher, I'm going to take Lamar Jackson in this situation.
All right.
And it's wild that all those guys that were ass, they were on the team last year too, and Mahomes was the QB1 overall. He can
lose his best wide receiver.
He can turn shit into stink. It don't matter, man.
All right, Gator. You heard both arguments for Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes as dynasty QB assets. Who's your pick?
This one is really tough because I truly like both of these guys, both of these quarterbacks, and both Rhett and Drew made great arguments for their player. But there is a clear number one when it comes to these two quarterbacks. And there is a clear tier between the two of them. And it is Patrick Mahomes. 1-1.
Cheddar Bob lives, baby.
And Lamar Jackson is second. I think Lamar Jackson actually, to be quite honest, has moved up in front of the likes of Josh Allen when it comes to this passing game. The way this passing game is rolling, you still have and even though they don't have the weapons, but in fantasy, we're expecting for Kansas City to go out there and grab some weapons. I think the missing out on DeAndre Hopkins this offseason is a true wake-up call for them. They're actually going to put some effort into it and make the right call and go grab a free agent or two, maybe grab a couple extra wide receivers in the draft. Like Rhett brought up, they do have a bunch of players, but they're all trash at the wide receiver position. What Baltimore's done with the wide receiver position is, they've got both. They've got the medium, or going out there and getting it in the draft, and then they brought in some veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And then bringing in an offensive coordinator that is allowing Lamar Jackson to throw the ball. This is where I think Lamar Jackson is actually going to propel himself over top of a Josh Allen when it comes to fantasy. He will be the new number 2. Not saying Josh Allen sucks by no means. He's moving from number 1, number 2 to number 3 at the worst. But I just see it being Patrick Mahomes in this debate right here is clearly the 1-1 for me.
There you have it. Well done. Well done, Drew. That is master debation. We got Adam Thielen over Curtis Samuel as the Week 16 flex winner. We got Jaden Daniels over Drake May as the QB2. And we got Patrick Mahomes over Lamar Jackson. as the QB Dynasty one asset. That's masturbation. I'm still messed up from the Drake May thing. Sorry, guys. But make sure you head over to www.fantasyandframes.com to find all our written articles from start sits to waivers. Drew's got his start sit article dropping later in the week, so make sure you watch out for that, as well as the Dynasty 365 show, which was on before us, Shoot the Gap, the IDP show, the Daily Fix, and the Sunday Q&A show, as well as the Waiver Wire show featuring our guy here, Gator J. We got Gator J with us here on Fourth and Frames, a very special, very long edition of Fourth and Frames. We are almost there. The finish line is right around the corner. We got one more segment to get to. It's usually the quickest one of the show. Let's fire up. It was Ring the Alarm, but now it's Trust or Bust. All right. Usually I present a player to each host or the guest, and I spit some facts about that player, and they decide whether or not we are ringing the alarm on said player or canceling the alert. But because we're so far into the fantasy season, we're going to switch it up a bit. We got this new segment here called Trust or Bust. I'm going to give a high profile player to each one of the gentlemen here, and they're going to let us know whether they are trusting that player or if that player is going to bust for week 16. And Gator, the whole show, you've been going from the top, so why switch it now? Your player is Austin Eckler, only a 40% snap share last week, 13 total touches, with Easton Stick being the QB. Matchup against the Bills, staff giving other opportunity to the other backs. Are we trusting Austin Eckler in the semifinals?
Easton, who's the quarterback? Easton who?
Easton Hockey Stick.
Hockey. Oh, isn't Easton a baseball bat though? Isn't that what that is from like?
Well, up in Canada, it's hockey sticks.
Okay, so it's okay. It has nothing to do with football. They don't make Easton footballs. They don't.
Nope.
No, okay. I just wanted to make that clear point out there. Yeah, Austin Eckler. Golly, what a roller coaster. It's been a pretty flat roller coaster, and it's been really, really low for most of this. You get these little ripples, right? It's almost like watching a heart monitor, but you're always riding this really low, flat plane with Austin Eckler this year. And it's sad because I was super, super excited about Austin Eckler this particular year. Had a very, very good week one.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, at the same time, that same week one, in that exact same game, so did Joshua Kelly against Miami. They both had very, very good weeks. In that game, Eckler gets hurt. Out for 3 games. Then he gets the bye week.
Yep.
And then it was meh. Ooh, he's back. Meh. And right as the time we sit there as fantasy analysts, as fans, and go, he's washed. He's done. They're going to give it Isaiah Spiller. They're going to give it Josh Kelly. Of course, Josh Kelly was that same meh that Austin Eckler was. But right at the time that we say that, they get Denver. And I'll be damned. He blows up, has a great game. Oh, he's back. It was just, he just needed the opportunity. Oh, we didn't box score it and go, oh shit, the only reason he got it was because of the touchdown. Because what happens next week? Yeah. I'm busting him. He's busting. I'm calling it done. Austin Eckler is done. They are giving Isaiah Spiller too much work. They're giving Josh Kelly a little bit of work, but they're really needing to see what they have in Isaiah Spiller. Their season is all but done. They noticed that last week whenever they fired their head coach. Austin Eckler's a free agent at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It is all about finding out what they have in Isaiah Spiller, I believe,
Yeah.
at this point. As far as this year, possibly going forward in fantasy for Dynasty, Austin Eckler is bust.
And it's kind of weird because we've seen it time and time again where the interim coach comes in for the head coach that just lost their job, and they kind of simplify their packages, giving the ball to their best players. We've seen it with Antonio Pierce in Las Vegas. We're seeing it in Carolina with them steadily giving the ball to Chuba Hubbard. So last week, I was expecting a healthy dose of Austin Eckler, and we just didn't get it. We were starved of the production for Austin Eckler. We were starved of the touches. We were starved of the snaps. And for some reason, the new interim head coach thought it would be a cute idea to give more touches to Isaiah Spiller, who can't even beat out Josh Kelly, let alone beat up Austin Eckler. So I agree with you.
I'll add this.
Go ahead.
I'll add this to you real quick, too, because here's the other side, especially going into this week.
Yep.
They're playing Buffalo.
Yeah.
Buffalo is fighting right now for their playoff life. Nobody wants to face Buffalo. Even the only people that want to see Buffalo in the playoffs are fans of Buffalo. Nobody else wants them in the playoffs because right now they're just that grimy, fight you to the death kind of a team.
Mm-hmm.
They have to win games. And you think for 1 second they're going to let an interim coach with an old man at running back, an Easton stick, a baseball player or a baseball bat or a hockey stick or however you want to look at it, at quarterback. This is the NFL. It's football, by the way. You're not allowed to do that. You can't cross sports that way. Sorry, Easton stick.
Yeah, it's going to be another rough outing, but it's going to be hard to sit a guy like Austin Eckler because with our luck, we'll put him on the bench. He's going to go out for 20.
You listen. Would you, stupid question. Would you rather him go off for 20 on your bench or throw you a 2?
I'd rather him throw me the 2, man. I don't want to take.
And then your bench is sitting there, and then your bench is sitting there with a guy like I don't know, Isaiah Spiller, who throws up 15.
Isaiah Spiller's not going to give you 15.
I'm not saying he is.
Now we're just talking in fairy tales.
Well, no, but you're going to sit there and you're going to sit a player.
Hindsight's always 20/20. Of course,
Sure.
I would rather, I'd rather not have him on my starting lineup go for 2, but it's just tough. Great points though. Busting Austin Eckler this week versus the Bills. Rhett, Trevor Lawrence, great matchup. But against NFC opponents is only averaging 12.88 fantasy points per game. Granted, there's only been three times where he's matched up against NFC opponents, 49ers, Saints, and Falcons. Of course, the ankle sprain is going to limit his abilities to rush the ball, but there's no time like the present, especially week 16, especially in the semifinals to start Trevor Lawrence. Considering the output that he had last week with the ankle sprain, we trusting or busting Trevor Lawrence this week?
All right, first off, let's go full disclosure. I've been kind of putting together some data, and I realize I'm not much of a Trevor Lawrence fan, but I will concede that as I started putting together this data, he's having a very strong second half of the season. A lot of top 10 QB finishes, and most of them have come against less than stellar pass defenses. Indianapolis twice, Tennessee's pass defense, Houston's pass defense, Cincinnati's pass defense, Cleveland's pass defense. And he's playing another one of those less than stellar pass defenses this week, and the Tampa Bay Bucks, which have been 27th against quarterbacks and 29th against wide receivers and tight ends. So it sets up as another good week for Trevor Lawrence if he's healthy, even if it is an NFL team. We're talking about a guy that is 4th in the league in attempts, 7th in deep attempts, 3rd in money throws, and is pretty accurate on all levels. Yes, he's missing Christian Kirk. He's out for the season. Yes, he's missing Zay Jones with a hamstring. But as Drew mentioned earlier, this should be a nice Calvin Ridley week. He still has Evan Ingram, And let's not forget that last year, Jamal Agnew had some pretty solid weeks as well. And Jamal Agnew is still on this roster, and he is still something of a weapon and an athletic guy. So the cupboard isn't empty for Trevor Lawrence by any means. Is the ankle an issue? It could be. But Tampa is giving up 7.2 yards per attempt, which is 29th in the league. And they're 31st in the league in pass yards given up per game, 263.9 yards per game. So what I'm telling you is this. I think Trevor Lawrence is a safe play this week. I think you should trust him in this matchup this week.
Fair points. Trust Trevor Lawrence, week 16. Last player on the docket before we head out of here, Drew. And I'm going to need you to take your bias out of this one. It's Puka Nacua, wide receiver 23 and wide receiver 40 over the last 2 weeks. Still seeing a great target share. Matchup isn't the greatest against the Saints, but Matt Stafford has been balling against New Orleans, averaging 2 touchdowns and 275 yards a game versus the Saints. Are we trusting or are we busting the sensational rookie wide receiver?
Yeah, and while the matchup for Stafford and Puka does look tough on paper, the Saints have they've mostly been just bullying bad quarterbacks this year, which, hey, you play who's on your schedule. No shade to them, but Ryan Tannehill, Mac Jones, Gardner Minshew, Desmond Ridder, Bryce Young a couple times, Tommy Cutlets, guys like that.
Murderer's Row.
Guys like that. And good quarterbacks like even Baker Mayfield, Trevor Lawrence, they've seen success. And even Josh Dobbs, whenever he was in the middle of his little insanity run there for a few weeks, he saw some success against New Orleans as well. So with excuse me, with how well Stafford is playing and how involved Puka has been, I'm still trusting Puka this week. The work is just so constant. It's so consolidated between Kupp and Puka. Over the last 2 weeks, they've made up 45% of the team's total targets, 65% of the team's receiving yards, and one of these two guys have been the first read on 52% of the team's plays. And the main thing that's been hurting Puka has been how productive DeMarcus Robinson has been of late, especially in the red zone. He's had 5 red zone targets over the last 2 weeks, which is more than Kupp and Puka combined, which is it's just wild to me. I mean, he's been the go-to guy in the red zone. So that would be my one concern. But with how often Puka's targeted, with how involved he is, I think the touchdowns are going to balance themselves out. Since Kupp's return from injury, Puka has been playing almost all of his snaps out wide, and that's where 56% of the fantasy points that New Orleans gives up to receivers has been going as well. So with how well Stafford's been playing as of late and how involved Puka is in the offense, and considering the matchup where you look at, slot versus outside receivers, call it bias if you want, that's fine, but I'm going to continue to trust Puka. I don't see how you start him, or I don't see how you sit him in week 16. I'm firing him up tomorrow night. I cannot wait to watch the game tomorrow night.
Yeah. See, I gave you Puka Nacua because I'm starting quite a bit of them in my semifinal matchups, and I just needed you to talk me off the ledge.
You knew I'd make you feel better.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I was looking for there, and you absolutely succeeded with that. I will not be taking Puka Nacua out of my lineups at all this week.
Chris, I don't want to, help you win more champion. I don't want to help you win more championships.
Okay.
But as a rookie, and more than likely redraft wise, an undrafted rookie for most fantasy, he was picked up off the waiver wire, whatever. A rookie wide receiver that has received at least 7 receptions every single game he's played and caught at least 3 of them every single game he's played. How do you leave him out of your lineup?
Yeah, he's a must start.
Trust.
Puka.
Trust him.
Gotta trust.
So we are busting Austin Eckler, trusting Trevor Lawrence, and trusting Puka Nacua for week 16. Fellas, what a show hour and 50 minutes. We appreciate each and every person that tapped in, watched the stream, liked the stream, or subscribed, asked the question, all of it from week 1 to 16. We are almost there. The finish line is close, and we are looking forward to you getting those trophies. Join us next week. We will have a special code from Trophy Smack to help you get those trophies and stunt on your league mates. Gator, thank you very much for joining the show. It was an absolute pleasure. Like we do with all our guests, the frame is yours. Let the people know what you got going on inside of fantasy football, outside of fantasy football.
Fellas, it was an absolute honor to share the screen with you tonight. Great show by all of you. I can't believe it's been 2 hours. I know it's way past old man Rhett's bedtime. I'm sitting here, the oldest man on the screen, and I'm like, dang, it's already been 2 hours. It feels
we
like
can keep this thing rolling, man.
Yeah, this show has flown by like 2023 did. I mean, we just started and it's over already. It's crazy. No, I mean, you can find me over at Fantasy in Frames. Like you've brought up a couple of times tonight. We do the Waiver Wire show on Tuesday. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyJ77. You got questions, DM me. My DMs are always open. The most important thing, though, is make sure you're following these three guys at FFB Chris B, at R Manual Sports, at Drew3MR. By the way, I've got to give you guys props real quick, and I don't know if you guys have put this out there yet. Maybe I'm breaking news. I don't know. I'm going to do it anyway. But between the three of you and Miss Stacy Perez, who is part of the Fantasy in Frames family, you guys have a special thing happening Friday primetime. You guys, the four of you will be on Sirius XM, doing some breakdown there. So tell the good people what you guys are going on with Howard Bender and the GM Jim Bowden on Friday. That's more important than talking about me, Mr. Rhett Manuel. Yeah,
we'll be on the Fantasy Alarm Show with Howard Bender and Jim Bowden this Friday from 5 to 7 Eastern. They invited us on, dedicating that show to Fantasy and Frames guests. We're just going to go in there, talk a little shop like we always do, have a little bit of fun. Howard's one of these guys that's easy to talk to. It's going to be a great time. Want everybody to be there, supporting, tuning in. It's going to be a blast. Just keep locking in with us because we're doing the best we can,
I think I'm gonna have to get with Howard and be like, you have to get a separate phone number for the Fantasy and Frames crew. Like, we should have like a bat phone. Like as soon as it rings, it's like maybe not a red phone, maybe a black and white phone. Right? Just boom. You know who's calling. You don't have to question it. I think that's awesome. No, props to you guys. I'm always in the background for most of the shows. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the fact that if you haven't already listened to it, go back and listen to Monday night. Was it Monday night, right, Drew? It was Monday night, right?
Yeah.
Monday night show with Bob Harris on Sirius XM. Drew finally made his Sirius XM debut. And here's the funny part is, and we talked about this earlier, but Rhett's been on Sirius XM, Chris, you've been on Sirius XM, Stacy's been on Sirius XM, but none of you. Drew will be the first one to make a Sirius XM appearance twice in a 1 week period.
Yes,
so
sir.
He may have been the last, but he is the first.
I'm gonna be the first to be there twice with these guys as well. My appearances might have been closer together, but that doesn't make them any more important. These guys have been crushing it all year, so they deserve the recognition as well. And it's been a pleasure to share the screen with all these guys. So I love it here, man. I like you said, Gator. We might have been going for almost 2 hours, but you could sign me up for another 2, and I'd be ready to go. I'd be ready to go right now.
I want to
give
props to all of you guys. What you guys have done. I know I've said this behind the scenes. I want to make it known that everybody, to all the fans, to everybody that jumps in the chat, the three of you, what y'all have done this year alone as a group, as individuals, absolutely phenomenal. I thank each one of you for having the, lack of a better way of saying it, the courage and the cojones to step up and do this. Not a lot of people do. And what you guys have done has been phenomenal. The growth has been great. And I love seeing it. So thank you all for allowing me to grace you right before the end of this year. And we get to popping off on a 2024. So happy holidays to everybody. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And I can't wait for a dominant 2024 when it comes to fantasy and frames, to the Fourth and Frames crew, 365, shoot the gap. I mean, hey, look, we even have the daily fix back now. So we're growing again, and we're doing things. So
yes, sir.
We back, baby.
I couldn't have said it better myself, Gator. All those kind words, and we greatly appreciate all your hard work and support behind the scenes as well.
Yep.
Fellas, hour and 55 minutes in the books. Week 16 is here. Semifinals for Drew at Drew3MR, for Rhett at R Manual Sports, for Gator J at Fantasy J77. I'm Chris Battistel. Toodles, Drake Mays QB2.